Thank you.
So we're going to go back from the tour, from Glastonbury. We're going to go to Birmingham. I'm going to introduce them together, if that's okay. So we'll go seamlessly between them. That also means, that means you can choose who goes first. So in Birmingham, we have the delightful, in fact, I knew them before they were married. We have Sriman Nandasuta Prabhu and Srimati Sarojini Didi. And Nandasuta, he actually came to the devotees in 1981. So he's like he's been in the Krishna zone a long time, and he met Gurudev Sangha. They both, Sarojini came to the devotees in the 90s, and they came into Gurudev Sangha in 2001. And Nanda took Harinam in 97, and then Diksha in 98, and Sarojini took Harinam in sorry, I got that wrong, I think. Sorry, Nanda took, and then Sarojini took Diksha and Harinam and Diksha in 2001. And just a few things to glorify them. One thing is, I know they make great prasadam. They've hosted Gurudev, and I also know Sarojini's pretty damn good on the deity worship and making deity clothes. And I think Nanda, you're a bit of an expert on permaculture as well, right? And all of that, yeah. And Nanda has a famous son, as in Vijay, the Kirtaniya, and the Kirtaniyas. So these are all feathers to their bows. But most of all, they're Gurudev's darling son and daughter. So I've introduced them both. So it's up to you. Who goes first? You need to unmute yourselves, though, my dears. And welcome to Gurudev's memories.
Can you hear us at the moment?
Perfectly, really well. Okay, really well.
Okay, Vishnu Padaya Krishna Staya Bhutale Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Sarasvati Devaguru Pachayane Nivasasya Samvadi Paschata Dasthanane Nama Mahavandaya Krishna Prema Padaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tasmi Namaha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapati Gopsha Goptakanta Radhakanta Namastate Tapcha Kancha Nagorangi Radhi Brindavaneshwani Vishipathu Sutadevi Pranami Hari. First, I'd like to pay my obeisances to our entire Guru Parampara, Srila Gurudev, Srila Prabhupada, and all of the wonderful devotees that are here. It feels like a real honor to be part of such a beautiful family, to be honest. And this situation where we're all able to communicate now, it feels wonderful because in the absence of Gurudev being physically present, and because we don't really have temples and we have no institution, it's kind of lovely that we can all communicate, link up, share, and develop that sense of community. So I'd like to thank everyone involved for doing that. I actually felt quite shy when asked to speak last time. I was not used to the Zoom scenario. Hopefully I'll be a bit happier and a bit more in the flow with it this time. So here we are. I'm going to checking my watch so I don't run over. I think we've been very fortunate to have had that contact with Srila Gurudev. He has his speciality. The first thing I would note is a wonderful affection, care and love, and the sense that we're all okay. Srila Gurudev would accept us exactly where we were, where we are, and use that as a starting point. You are okay, it's okay. You've been on a long journey, but we've arrived with him, we arrived with Srila Gurudev where we were. He even used to emphasize we must have done something to have gotten into his association. But I also heard that it's actually impossible to accrue sufficient sukriti to come into the association of such a wonderful personality as Srila Gurudev. So it's actually impossible to reconcile those two disparate concepts. Ultimately, I think we just have to remember that we've been the recipients of mercy, and that the element of becoming grateful to that, for that lovely mercy shown to us, is a mood that we need to develop. Try to understand what Srila Gurudev is offering to us, slowly but surely. Try to understand that, work with that, and remember the love and care shown to us in that way. Srila Gurudev was actually, and is actually, a very mystical, wonderful personality. It's actually impossible to fathom the depth of that. This personality we're speaking about. There's so many sweet occasions with Srila Gurudev. I think I'm going to speak about a few practical occasions where Srila Gurudev just showed so much kindness and so much sweetness. And it just, for me, it made the world feel really okay. We live in a crazy world. I don't think anyone here would disagree for a moment that the world's actually a madhouse. Srila Prabhupada called it a prison. I know it sounds, I'm not being pessimistic, but the material world is actually a madhouse. But fortunately, by some great good fortune, we're given an opportunity to develop another relationship with reality through Srila Gurudev. Srila Gurudev's given us an opportunity to show us that there's another dimension to reality that's hidden, a beautiful, sweet reality in the forms of these beautiful personalities who we have an eternal connection with. Jiva Swarupai Krishna Nichadas Krishna Litatasta Shakti Beda Beda Prakash. By constitutional position, we're all servants of Sri Sri Radha Krishna. But through association with the lower energies, the modes of nature, we've come into a state of forgetfulness. And through this state of forgetfulness, we feel that we're here to enjoy this world and become implicated with the unlimited chains of Sattvagun, Rajagun, Tamagun, where we can be chained with a gold chain, a silver chain, or an iron chain, but ultimately the material world's a prison. So somehow or other, somebody's come with a key to the jail, opened the door somewhat and said, hey, you can step outside of this jail into a beautiful reality. Now with Srila Gurudev, there was no actual forced instruction. Gurudev always invited us, please let me show you something beautiful. Try to do this. There was never any coercion. Please come with me. I will hold your hand. I'll take you to the beautiful land of Goloka Vrindavan. But there are a few provisos. You will have to put a few things in place. So this is where the challenges come in. Srila Gurudev, he outlined the process very carefully, and also the beautiful goal with emphasis on service to Srimati Radharani, with her being Ladini Shakti, the personification of the pleasure potency, not even just the counterpart of Krishna, but actually the master of Krishna, the superior energy, without which Krishna has no Shakti. We understand Krishna to be Sarva Shaktiman, the possessor of all potencies, but actually, without Srimati Radharani, he has no energy, no joy, no pleasure. We hear the Leela of Govardhan Leela, and we understand Krishna with his little pinky held up Govardhan. Indra Devi was flooding Govardhan because he'd not received the glorification that he'd expected. So Krishna, we understand Krishna's there holding up Govardhan hill for all of the Braj Basis to hide underneath and take shelter from the storm. But actually, we hear from Srila Gurudev that it's Radharani who's holding up Govardhan hill. With her glances, she's glancing at Krishna, and he's holding up Govardhan with his little pinky. So we understand that Radharani is the support and the energy behind Krishna. She's actually the dynamo. She's the energetic force without which Krishna has no joy, no happiness, and no energy. Some would argue, you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's hardly any mention of Srimati Radharani. But Gurudev always emphasized that within every syllable, within every paragraph, inside every sloka, Srimati Radharani is hidden in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srila Gurudev was considered pretty controversial with the emphasis on Radharani and not Krishna. Perhaps our organization, our loose-knit collection of beautiful souls should have been called the International, or should be called the International Society of Radha Consciousness, which is a bit of a counterpoint to some of the narratives we hear. And also, even though Srila Gurudev clearly outlined all of the helpful things we should do, Sarvasiddha Bhakti, with the emphasis on the teachings of Rupa Goswami, where we would take on board as many things as possible that would be helpful, like Vachavegam and all the other items that we need to help us to chant, humility, paying respects to others according to their position. The underpinnings being Vaidhi Bhakti, where we do whatever's favourable to help us on our journey. The emphasis given by Srila Gurudev was actually on Raganuga Bhakti, spontaneous Rag Marg, which is also, well, and still is, considered then and also now, highly controversial. Because in the world of rules and regulations, we understand that we have to do everything according to a certain pattern. But it almost seems impossible to do everything perfectly. And my understanding is that Srila Gurudev outlined that the price we had to pay to be able to make this relationship with Sri Sri Radha Vinod Bihari is Raganuga Bhakti. And this being based on greed, ultimately lobha. We've got to have some greed, we've got to develop some taste so that we're spontaneously attracted. It turns out I'm beginning to understand that ruchi is also the currency required to develop that relationship. So we have to somehow or other develop some ruchi, some taste for that relationship, so that we can develop more and more and find out what our goal of perfection is. And somehow or other, develop our sense of who we are, what our relationship is under the guidance of Srila Gurudev. Srila Gurudev actually outlined to us that we have a special relationship with Radha and Krishna, and that we actually have a divine form that is hidden by a false ego, ahankara, through identification with these lower energies that we always, I speak for myself here, always permanently seem to be entangled with. Working, making money, maintaining the body without allowing enough time for our actual goal of life, which is developing this relationship, this sadhana. Fortunately, Srila Gurudev was very good at outlining the process in a very, very practical measure. I remember one time when Srila Gurudeva was at my house, he was discussing with PureBhakti, Bhaktivedanta Madhav Maharaj, the process that they were actually planning the class that they were going to give that day. And I'll probably get tongue-tied, but it was the Ado Shraddha sloka that they were discussing. And the outline of this is that we start off with a little pinch of Shraddha, a little tiny, tiny bit of faith. And through that tiny bit of Sukriti, we come into Sadhu Sangha. And then through this Sadhu Sangha, where we try to do a little bit of service, which is Vapu, and through those loving exchanges, somehow or other, we do some loving exchanges with Srila Gurudeva. And Vani, by trying to take on board any instructions that are given to us, somehow or other, we come into the next stage, which is these are the elements of Sadhu Sangha, where we actually try to develop a relationship with Srila Gurudeva. Sadhu Sangha isn't hanging around. Srila Gurudeva used to say, don't think everyone is my disciple. But the real disciple that we all need to be, and we're trying to develop, is having this relationship. So this is Sadhu Sangha. So once Sadhu Sangha starts to develop, we embark on the journey of Bhajana Kriya. Bhajana Kriya is, it won't actually be bhajan, because bhajan can only really be carried out in bhav stage. But somehow or other, we try to engage in the sadhana, hearing, remembering, and chanting. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasham, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam, with the actual emphasis on Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. Now, out of all of these three, Gurudev narrowed it down even more. Kirtanam. So Kirtanam, because of its innate nature, also contains Smaranam, remembrance. So out of all of these angas of bhakti, the Navada bhakti, Kirtanam is the sole activity that will really help us. Haririnam, 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 Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nashteva, Nashteva, Nashteva. Gatiranita. When we start off, we can chant a couple of rounds and try, do a bit of reading, but we have to dive deep. Within the name of Krishna, actually, because Krishna is absolute, the name, form, pastime, and every other beautiful aspect of Krishna is all encompassed within the name. Rup, Guna, Leela. These aspects are all encompassed within the name. And to the degree we can associate with this name of Krishna clearly, with no personal intent, for moksha or any of the secondary benefits that we would get from chanting, the more we can engage with this, then the more we're going to be able to directly associate with Krishna. Okay, that sounds easy. The difficulty is, Srila Gurudeva used to describe certain impediments that we have in the heart, known as anartas. There's so many, actually. I speak for myself. There's laziness, alasya. There's weakness of heart. The major one that all of the conditioned jivas have is asatrishna. Asatrishna is an innate envy of Krishna, where we consider ourselves to be the enjoyer in this world. We want to enjoy this world without having the understanding that Krishna is actually the enjoyer of everything in the form of Rishikesh. He's the enjoyer of all ras and all pleasure. He's the enjoyer. And our joy comes through serving his senses, not through serving ours. When we try to serve our own senses, then we'll only have unhappiness. But when we serve the senses of Krishna, under the guidance of Srila Gurudeva, then we'll feel the joy. So, of course, there's some provisos here. If we're just chanting a few names here and there occasionally, then the chances of actually speaking one name, we only need to speak one pure name. If we can speak one pure name in our lifetimes, then we've actually associated with Krishna. In the early stages of chanting, it's all actually Nama Parad. Because these impediments, we're chanting because we want liberation, we want pleasure for ourselves. There are other things that we wish, secondary benefits. But somehow or other, if we can continue to chant, somehow or other, we'll come into the stage of Namabhas, where somehow or other, a shadow of that name will be manifest in our hearts, be manifest for us. And if we can continue chanting and begging for that guidance from Srila Gurudeva, to have the energy and the heart to chant like that. Ekaki alma nahi payabal, Harinama Sankirtan. Do Gurudeva, but have no strength, have no good qualities to be able to chant these names, but somehow or other, you can help me to do this. So if we can remember, we have to beg and cry to Srila Gurudeva. If we're not crying for this guidance, we may as well just give up, because it's just a travesty. If we're not crying for this guidance and begging, actually, then we don't care, okay? So there's a description of Aropa Siddha Bhakti, Sangha Siddha Bhakti, and Swarup Siddha Bhakti. We understand that Swarup Siddha Bhakti is Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, these activities associating with Krishna through the names, and all these activities. And we've got Sangha Siddha Bhakti. Sangha Siddha Bhakti, even though not being Bhakti, Sangha Siddha Bhakti are actually these activities that we can do, although not being made of the activities of Bhakti, like chanting and remembering, are actually very helpful to be able to make Bhakti manifest in our hearts, make this name manifest for us and develop this relationship. So Srila Gurudeva always emphasized accepting what was favorable, leaving behind what's unfavorable, so we can develop this relationship. So we have to beg for this mercy, but somehow or other we can chant uninterrupted, actually, without forgetting during the day. If we forget, bring our mind back, try and develop this spontaneity, bring our minds back to the name. Even if we're working, we can remember. Even if we're not chanting, we can sing. Srila Gurudeva used to say we can sing during the day. Talked about the Brajbasis singing. Govindam, Damodar, Madhava, Abeti. You know, we can sing, we can remember, trying to put ourselves in that space. It's not actually about living in Goloka Vrindavan. We don't have to live in the manifest Vrindavan, but we have to try to be there in our hearts and minds. I'd say to anyone, if we want to, and this is instructions for myself, after struggling, I've been around 40 years now. I've been chanting 4 rounds, 16 rounds, 2 rounds, 30 rounds, on and off for that time. Realizing that time's short, because we never know when we're going to leave the planet. Sometimes we have to make an endeavor, actually a sankalpa, where we decide, make a vow, that we're going to engage with the process that Srila Gurudeva has given us. And it's actually very difficult to chant a lakh every day if you're working. I run a business. Saroj is a full-time teacher. We have extremely busy lives. It's so full on. We've got about 25 deities to look after as well. I've got my garden, I've got my business. But actually, all we can do is try to chant this, 110,000 names a day. It takes quite a few hours. But if we get organized, it's possible. Get a few rounds done in the morning. Every time we get a chance, chant some more, have a break, chant some more. And it's actually a really good opportunity to take a step back from the world, sit down, get your beads and chant, and just, this is what we're trying to do. And I just hope and pray one day I can chant one pure name and achieve my goal. So I've shared my heart with you all. If I've made any mistakes or errors or upset anyone or made any offences, please forgive. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to share. Thank you all. Thank you.
Nanda, that was really beautiful. Actually, the danger is if I comment on everything you've just said, I feel I'm in danger of giving a whole class in itself, because you covered so much ground and with so much emotion and heart participation. It was really a very stunning, Pushpanjali. And you also, what I really liked is you gave a flavor of who Gurudev is as a unique personality, and you also gave a very strong indication of his instructions. So we got Vapu and Vanu beautifully integrated in one contribution. The things that stood out for me was how you said that near the beginning of your offering, you said about how you can't actually ever amass enough Sukriti to be in the company of a Mahabhagavad like Srila Gurudev. And that reminds me of something I'm meditating on a lot at the moment, which is that we're not qualified for this Braj praying, but actually it doesn't matter, we're not qualified. That's the whole point. And that perhaps our qualification is to know we're not qualified. When we realize we know we're not qualified, we can just be openly arms stretched out in receipt of his mercy. That's all we need to do, is to get out the way and let his mercy do the job, because it will do the job if we get out the way. Which kind of links into how you said about how Gurudev always invited us. There was never any coercion, because he knew that he would always conquer our hearts through love, through attraction. And also what you said about Raganuga Bhakti, the thing that struck me is the seminal instruction on Raganuga Bhakti is that, and sometimes people get the balance slightly off, is that we're not actually Raganuga, well, some of us may be, I'm not a Raganuga Bhakta, but I practice Vaidhi Bhakti with the aspiration of my heart to be a Raganuga Bhakta, knowing that if I just practice Vaidhi Bhakti without that desire to be motivated by greed in my heart, then all I can get to is Vaikuntha through Vaidhi Bhakti on its own. But if I practice the same Vaidhi Bhakti with a desire not to be impelled by the fear of scriptural injunction, but by the desire to have love of God in my heart continually, to be propelled by lobh, not propelled by fear, then there's some chance that at some point that Vaidhi Bhakti can transmute into Raganuga Bhakti, and that is the treasure that Gurudev's giving us. And then you also were saying about, I can't remember whether it was actually before or after you started crying, but you said that I think it was afterwards, you said, if we don't cry, then we might as well give up. But I remember at one point thinking, because someone was saying to me years ago, you have to have greed. You have to have greed for bhakti. And if you have greed for bhakti, then you're crying. But then I thought to myself, I don't have any greed. So I thought, I might as well give up. I'm useless. But then when I realized if I don't have greed, I can have greed for greed. I wanted greed. And then when I got greed for greed, then some greed started to come. So maybe if we don't cry yet, we can beg to cry. And by begging to cry, we will ultimately cry at some point. So thank you so much. That was so beautiful. Really, I'm so happy. I'm so happy you you chose to come on Zoom, overcame your embarrassment. I can see where your son gets his shirtless thing from. He's like his dad.
Actually, I'm feeling really hot at the moment. It's hot here. The sun's out. It's a beautiful day.
It's a beautiful day. Proper spring day.
Hot, and I stripped down to a vest, and I've actually got shorts on, but you can't see them. You're not meant to do that on Zoom. It's a real.
Yeah. No, we don't want to see your shorts, Nanda. That's all right. Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Before we move over to the dear darling Sarojini, Ishadara, you wanted to add anything? Have you frozen or are you still there? I know your connection's not so good. Oh, there she is.
I don't know if I should say anything because I keep freezing for some reason every time I keep speaking. But I just want to say, Nandasuta Prabhu, that I'm just really, really honored that you've come and spoken such beautiful Harikatha about Srila Gurudeva and actually what he came to give. And, you know, you can hear your gratitude in the way that you've described what Srila Gurudeva came to give. And you have some realization of that. So I'm just very fortunate to be in your association, and I'm looking forward to more programs together when we're back out of lockdown. So thank you.
Thank you.
No, Nanda, one thing I wanted to add to that, I was just thinking about what you were saying, was that we go kind of, I think as devotees, we go wet and dry in our bhakti. You know, sometimes we cry, sometimes we go dry. That rhymed. It didn't mean to rhyme. That was quite good, wasn't it? But we cry, we go dry. And I think sometimes when we go dry in our bhakti, I think that's when we get a lot of mercy, when Parampara can see that we're still going for it, even though we're not feeling anything, because we know we have enough faith that we're going to get through on to the other side. So it's sometimes also about going through the dry spells and making it through the dry spells. I think that's critical.
I would say my whole life has been a dry spell, a drought of bhakti. There's been a drought going on with a few sprinkles of water. Srila Gurudeva used to use the analogy of bringing water to water our gardens. So there's a lovely analogy there in terms of water.
Are you self-sufficient now?
No, we've just got a small garden here. I used to have a huge allotment and produce 1,000 kgs of organic fruit and veg.
Wow.
We've got a gardening project. We're in the process of buying a farm in Greece at the moment. That's hopefully going to go through when the lockdown ends in Greece. So we're literally waiting for the paperwork to be signed for that now, hopefully in the next couple of months.
Wow.
We're going for a food forest scenario in Greece. And also we wish it to be a place where devotees just want to come and have a break from the, city life and near the mountains and near the ocean.
Do you know Atma? You must know Atma. Yeah?
I don't know Atma.
She's a beautiful, beautiful senior devotee who's actually in England at the moment, who also has a place in Greece.
Oh. I don't know her.
I should probably put you in touch with her.
Okay.
Please do.
Okay.
So this is a plan. It's a plan for a big garden, basically, and maybe have a bit more time for sadhana instead of just working, because I run a business here, and you can't do that forever. You get to my age at 61, it's like, actually, when do we find time to chant? Life is a short life. We shouldn't be working and accumulating forever. Over accumulating.
As you said, asat trishna, yeah.
That's right. Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.